In this video, we'll look at several different ways that you can bind to the class attribute. So let's take a look at class.html in the Chapter 1 Video 8 exercise files start folder. As you can see, I haven't done anything in here aside from setting up a view-enabled shell and a few basic CSS classes. When binding to the class attribute, we can use vBindClass or the shortcut :class and give it an object containing class names as keys with Boolean values indicating whether or not we wish to apply that class. So I'll use the square class, but generally we won't use just true or false, but something that might change. For example, in data, if we had a cold property and a hot property with those values, we could say that we only want to apply the blue class if cold is true, and we only want to apply the red class if hot is true. So now we see a blue square. By the way, there's no reason that you can't include a static class attribute as well as a bound class attribute. So it's perfectly fine to just move square into a separate static class attribute if you always want that class. Another way we can bind to class is by using an object, like the way we can bind an object containing CSS properties to the style attribute. This would be the same type of object that we just used above, but declared in data instead of inline. So then I could bind the class attribute to CSS classes. And then I see a div with that dash border. Finally, we can also use an array of data properties that correspond to class names. So I could define properties like square class and BG color class with values that are the actual class names that I want to use. And then I could bind to an array containing those properties. So this should give us a red square. It's even possible to mix these two syntaxes. So we could say conditionally add another class if the selected property were true. This can get a little confusing because you have to keep in mind that these are property names from data, and this is a normal CSS property name. But when we refresh, if I open up the console and start changing the value of selected, you can see that that dashed border is toggled along with that value. One way that I can make this interactive is by adding a text field that's two-way bound to the BG color class. So now this is updating the value of BG color class, which updates the DOM by changing the class attribute on the last div. Class and style bindings should be relatively straightforward. So if you find that they're becoming confusing, you may want to review the various methods to see if you can't find a better approach. Now it's time for a deeper dive into the view instance and a look at some additional options that we can pass to its constructor.